Hi and welcome back to Grace Engine Developments. Today I'm working on the BMW M12 race engine. So my customer has bought some boxes of bits in, which I just started opening. So I just thought I'd run through these. I just want to say a big thanks to Paul at Ridgeway Racing Engines for supplying the parts. So we've got two cam cover gaskets, a pair of a head gasket, some valve stem oil seals in one box, and then in the second box I was talking to my customer and I said that I really wasn't happy with the parts having odd valve springs in it, and some of the valves weren't looking particularly brilliant. So new collets, because at the moment they're triple cotter and we're going for a single cotter or single groove cotter. We've got a new set of valve spring caps. Some of the head bolts was damaged, so we supplied two brand new titanium head bolts. I mean, they're amazingly light. And then there's a full set of valve springs there. And then in there must be a new set of inlet and exhaust valves. So what I'm going to have to do now is cut the seats, because the seats were distorted on it, and grind the valves in, number them so we know that we're getting them in the right hole, and then build the cylinder head back up. So I'm starting to do the machining on the BMW M12 cylinder head. The first thing that I've done is just cleaned off some of the old instant gasket, because it was just making the head move around a little bit. I've now got the head clamped down into the Myra Centronic seat cutter. I've plotted the angle of the inlet valve, and I've now copied the angle onto the cutter. So next thing to do is just make sure everything's nipped up. Remove the valve setting tool, self-center the machine before I put it into the cylinder head. Switch the magnet on, self-center the machine in the pilot. Then once it's centered, lock the machine off, and then start to cut the new angle onto the valve seat. And straight away I could see that the valve seat was a fair way off, actually. And that's now all the seat has been cut. I can clean the swarf off it, and then grind my valve into the seat. So what I'm going to do now is put a bit of carburetor paste around the valve, and I'm going to do it valve by valve, grind it in, just mark the valve so I know it's for the certain seat. And then finally just give the valve a wipe, check the seating angle on the valve, which is all ground in perfect, nice grey line all the way round, and then make sure the same mark is on the valve seat. So I can mark that valve with number 5. And move on to the next one. Another thing that I just thought I would point out on the M12 BMW engine is, I mentioned before when I was stripping it down that the valve seats was all distorted. Well, they are definitely. The seat cutter is self-centering on the guide, so it's very rare that seat cutter throws a wobbly and cuts off centre. And as you can see, this seat that I've cut here is shiny, so is this one here. But when you look at this one here, it's dull. So this has had a different valve seat fitted at some time in its life, and this probably explains why the valve springs are different as well. It must have had some blow up or some major repair, I would guess. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and mount my camera to see if it will pick up the distortion in the seat, because they've all been distorted so far. Okay, right, let's cut the seat anyway. So first of all, it puts the top angle on. And then it starts to put the actual seat angle on, which is there. And straight away it's cutting off this side of the seat, but it hasn't touched the right side of the seat yet. So I'll plunge down a little bit more, and there we are, it's just cut all the way round now. So that seat was distorted also. So I've cut all the inlet seats, I've ground all the inlet valves in, I've swapped the head over to do the exhaust, I've set the tooling up to do the exhaust, and I've cut the first exhaust seat. It's now got a 3-angle seat, which has got a top angle, a seating angle, and then a lower angle. The first seat that I did was also distorted, but it cleaned up really nice actually. It did clean up quite quick. It wasn't as bad as what I thought it was going to be, but we'll see what the rest of them are like. That's both the inlet and exhaust seats now cut. The inlets I've ground in, so I'm going to grind the exhausts in next, but I thought I would just point out that on cylinder 4, where it had the different inlet seats, it's also got different exhaust seats. I don't know if they're showing, but they don't match, so I need to measure the inside diameter of this seat and then cut it onto this seat, which I'll measure it now just to show that they don't match. So on cylinder number 4, the inside diameter of that seat is 26.67, but on cylinder number 3 it measures to be 27 mil, which doesn't seem a lot, but it's not right. So I'm gonna open these throats up to match these other cylinders. But what is also interesting is cylinders number 1 and 2, the seat is like a shiny seat. So that's the same, but on cylinders number 3 it actually looks like it's copper beryllium. I'm not 100% sure on that. And then these just look like a sintered steel lead-free seat, what I normally fit into, like, well, when I do lead-free conversions. So it's definitely had all the 4 seats in this cylinder changed, and it looks like, although the camera's not picking it up, cylinder 3 has got copper beryllium seats in it, I'd say. However, cylinder 3, the inside diameter is the same as cylinders 1 and 2. So all I'm going to do is just open the throat on that cylinder there, and we'll be well away. So that's this seat here opened up to the right amount. It looks different because of the colour of the seats, but I'm just wondering if it's showing the difference between this seat that I've cut and this seat that I need to cut. I mean, I think I can see it in the camera, but yeah, it's quite a big difference. So the BMW M12 engine is going back together. I'm just setting the tappets at the moment, and the new valves that we've had supplied are a little bit shorter than the original BMW valves, so I'm having to I'd have to reshim the head anyway, but I'm having to just put a thicker shim in it now as well, so it's almost like starting again with the tappets. But the inlet side is now done. The unfortunate thing about these is the actual cam box is glued on. So now I've set the tappets, I need to take this off, spin it round, do the exhaust side, then bolt the head on, torque the head down, and then piece it back together. So that's the cylinder head back on the M12 engine. All the tappets are set, head's torqued down. We put new titanium bolts in it, new valves. I've put the timing back on the original marks, and I'm just going to check them with the gauges in a minute as well. I haven't skimmed anything off the head because I didn't want to interfere with the meshing of the gears. So got a few bits in the cleaner at the minute. I've got to put the fuel pump on it, and then it's ready for my customer to collect. One thing that I've noticed while putting this M12 engine back together is this front drive that bolts on to here. I've just noticed that, I don't know if the camera's picking it up, that these are M6 cap screws, where they're a little bit too long, they've been rubbing on the camshaft gear. So I'll put some shorter ones in, and or machine these ones down and sort that problem out. So that's the BMW M12 engine all back together, looking pretty special. So I'm just waiting for the customer now to come and collect it. It's on slide throttles as well. So a brief description or rundown of what I've done to it. It come in looking exactly the same. I've taken the cylinder head off. We've noticed blacking on the valve seat and on the valve. So I've cut all the valve seats. We've had new valves supplied. It had odd springs in it, so we've replaced the springs. It's had some damage on one of the cylinders before. It had 4 seats in it, so what I've done is, or what I noticed was the inside diameter of 2 of the seats on the inlet smaller than the other 3 cylinders, so I've leveled all that up now. The valves that were supplied are 1.6mm shorter, so we've changed all the tappets in the cylinder head, set the tappets. I've only cleaned up the head surface because of the gearing at the front. I didn't want to skim the cylinder head because I didn't want to mess around with the meshing, and I've put it back on the timing marks, which was set prior to it coming here. I did when it come here, I've got it on TDC, and there was a mark on the flywheel that I lined up, and then there's 2 marks on the cam gears that I've lined up, so I've put them back to that. Also the rotor arm and all the firing orders the same with the fuel pump. So like I said, it's all ready now for my customer to collect, and he can get it back in the car and go racing with it. So a little job that I've got in today is for Mickey next door. And it's off his own Harley Davidson. It's a shovel head 1973, and it's a seat bracket that we need to just put a new bush in to take a tractor style seat. So I've already pushed out the new bush, which I used my gudgeon pin press for that. No, did I say new bush? I meant old bush. So there's the old bush, and it's just a steel, nasty looking thing, to be fair. And what Mickey wants to do is run a shouldered smaller bolt through that. So what we're going to use for that is a bit of phosphor bronze. So we've got a little bit of bar stock, put it in the lathe, and now I've just started turning it down to size so we can get that right. So that's the bush partly machined now, so I'm boring the hole in at the moment, and then I'm going to slice it off, tidy the end up, and then fit it into the seat bracket. What I need to do now is carefully drill down that hole there. That's for greasing the joint, so that's the next job. That's it all done, and I've reamed out the bore to size so it's a proper fit. So I'm going to go and give that back to Mickey now, and on to the next job. The next job I've had come in is off a motorcycle for a garage just around the corner from me. They've pressed in these 2 main bearings into these motorcycle casings, and the crank doesn't fit in there. So I'm going to grind the main bearings on the crank to get it to fit, but I thought I'd just stick a ball gauge down here and check the size of it, and I've got 5 thou of out of true in this bearing. So what I don't want to do is grind the crank and then have the battle of trying to get past the fact that these bearings are not even in here round. So I've just set my Sun & Conrod hone up, and what I'm going to do is just hone both both halves of the casing, so they're exactly the same size. Just take a bit out of it and then grind the crank to give me the right clearance on that. So this machine here has a honing mandrel in here, and then it has a foot controller down the bottom which expands this stone here, and then it tells you how much pressure you're putting onto the stone on this gauge here. So I can set it up once and then hone the second one to the same size. And that's it, that's both halves of the motorcycle block honed. So now what I'm going to do is make a note of the size. They're both exactly the same now. I've only blipped them so they're round again. I'm going to work out the clearance for the crankshaft, which I think's 2 to 4 thou, and then I'm going to grind the crank to suit. What I'm doing now is machining 15 thousandths of an inch off the main bearings. Explain what this tool is here. This is called a continuous gauge. So what we do with this is measure the crank, see how much we've got to take off, and then set this gauge for that setting. Get close, measure it, always double check it, then just if you need to reset this and go again. This also keeps an eye on ovality. So what I'm going to do now is just drop the micrometer on it to check that it has ground to the right size. And yeah, that's spot on, so on to the next one. A quick polish and then try it in the casing. It looks awesome. So I'll just give it a quick wipe off, put it in the cases and see if it turns. That's the motorbike crank all machined down to the right clearance, and it turns lovely in there now. There we are. Lovely job. So, pretty big moment for me right now. This is the first job being done in the new workshop, or first paying job. I'll show you what they are. It's my injector tester. I've had a few sets of injectors turn up. The ones that I'm doing today, or the first ones that I'm doing today, are these Pico 480s. They're out of a Vauxhall XE 8 injector running methanol. So these are coming to be checked, serviced, new O-rings if they're okay. The customer's also supplied some spares that he just wants me to run them up and check them as well, so I'll get them done. And then after that, these ones here are some side feeds out of a Dodge Viper. These have been here a little while, but I've been waiting for new O-rings, which I've now got, so I'll get those done as well. And then yesterday I had turn up a set out of a Nissan Skyline, so I'll run these. They look a bit dirty, so I'll change all the filters and bits and bobs on those too. So yeah, a big moment. First paying job in the new unit. I'm well happy about that. Also want to thank Tony at Asnu for sending me out the bits for the injector tester. So that's great. Cheers, mate. So on the Vauxhall XE Pico injectors for the race car, straight away we've found a fault. This injector here is not firing, but I did notice when I was just checking them over that the terminal was a bit loose. So I'm kind of hoping that's the customer's problem. I'm going to swap that injector over with a spare before I do all the tests, just so I know that they're all working at the same rate. So I've just replaced the faulty injector with one of his spares, and straight away the spray pattern is different. It's more of a piercing pattern. But if I also put it into the test tubes, and what you'll see is this is the spare injector. The actual injection, the penetration is a lot more fierce than the other 7, and the one on the end is just quite a bad pattern completely, with hardly any penetration into the fluid. But after the 30 seconds they are all injecting roughly around the same. There is a slight difference, but they're performance injector, and I've never really seen performance injectors get absolutely bang on. And also by the time they've been cleaned it would level them up. But what's quite interesting is how fierce this one is. It looks like it's delivering loads more, but after 30 seconds it isn't. It's about bang on. So I'm going to get hold of my customer, and because this is an 8 injector 4-cylinder engine, see if we change the 4 bad injectors for his spares, and then just position them so the 4 that are going to be a bit more fierce are further back on the engine, and then the ones with more of a spread pattern are at the front of the engine. So I'm just waiting for him to give me a call, and then I can discuss that with him. So that's the Pico injectors now in the ultrasonic. This is now the final test of the injectors. I'm now using 4 of the original that was in the engine and 4 of the spares, so they can be batched together, because this 4 here's got quite a fierce spray pattern to it, and these 4 are more of a fan style, but they are delivering all the same. So I'm running up the 10 Dodge Viper injectors. I'm having to use the special side feed block, which I've ran them all up. I've got a baseline reading, so what I'm going to do now is ultrasonically clean them all. So that's the Viper injectors all done and bagged up now. New seals on that, flow tested. There's all the old seals to give back to the customer. So now I'm going to do a set of Skyline injectors, but I'm not going to record these. So the last job I'm going to do before I end this vlog is a valve spring job. I've got a customer that's come in with a single motorbike valve spring, and he needs to know the data off it. So I'm in the new unit finally, not completely, but in my computer room. Done injectors today, which has been my first proper job in here, and now I've just set up the valve spring tester. It's right next to the camshaft tester in one of the clean rooms, and then we've got the flat block for measuring valves and pistons and all sorts of different heights that I need to do and building engines. But it's all nice and easy to get to in here and clean for once, so I'm so happy at the moment. But there, the valve spring tester's mounted here. This is the spring. So in the computer I've just put in some basic data, logged the customer's name and everything, and then basically this part here allows me to test the spring. So all I do is hit record, and then this linear sensor, which is at the back here, moves with the computer to get the free length, the installed height and the coil bind for the spring. As you can see, it's just starting to put pressure on now, but the computer's already preset for the settings. And then all we do is just pump the spring just slightly past coil bound and then back it off, and then it saves the data. It then puts all the spring data by height here, and then the force of it, so from when the valve starts to lift all the way to just before coil bound, it gives us the force in pounds. I can then view it as a graph, and then I can also click on it at different heights, and then it gives me the data up in this top part of the screen here at a certain thou of lift. So this is really good, because when I'm testing a full set of valve springs for a race engine, even when it comes in after being topped and tailed, I can monitor and keep an eye on the spring data. Sorry, I answered the phone. So yeah, so this gives me a pointer to go at where I can view the spring's details at a certain lift up here. So every race engine, normally we keep some spring data, and when it comes in for a rebuild, we'll just check that the springs are still performing as they did when they was brand new. So what I can do now is, from this spring data that I've recorded, I can then find a spring to suit, because what he wants me to do is find a slightly better upgraded version of this spring. So what I'll do is I'll just look through one of the spring catalogues, match up with something from Kent Cams, is where I normally get all my springs from. So I'll match something up, and then I'll speak to Andy at Kent Cams and get them sent to him, and that'll be another job sorted. So it's Thursday, bank holiday weekend, as from tomorrow, Easter bank holiday. So I hope everyone has a really good Easter break. I'm working tomorrow on the unit to try and get a bit more forward on this. Saturday I think me and the wife are going out for a little while, and then Sunday I'm hopefully going to Brands Hatch to watch the first pickup truck race, and my mate Neil's racing his Sierra, I believe, so I'll take the GoPro and get some footage of that. Unfortunately we're not at Brands this weekend because the truck is looking a bit worse for wear still, and the coach is even worse. But like I say, I hope everyone has a great weekend, and I'll catch you on the next video. See ya.